It is such a pleasure to be here. First of all, I would like to thank the management and board of Junior Achievement Africa, especially my big sisters, mummies, and aunties that have held the fort of junior achievement in Africa and in Nigeria, and the senior brothers and uncles and fathers that have really been a guide for the organization for this long. As the MC alluded, I am a very proud Junior Achievement alumni, class of 2008. No, much earlier than that. Yeah, 2008, yes. Class of 2008 from Loyola Jesuit College, just down the road here in Abuja. And I must say, my junior achievement experience was quite formative and amazing. In many ways, junior achievement was really crucial to my development, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a citizen and as a leader. I like to joke that there were 3 loves that I had in high school at Loyola. The first was the Loyola Union, which was the first student union at Loyola, which I had the infamy of setting up by largely forcing the Reverend Fathers to set up a student government. And then the second was the Citizenship and Leadership Program, Man O' War, which I had the pleasure of participating with. And I'll talk a little bit about Man O' War and also recognize the presence of the Director General of the Citizenship and Leadership Training Center, Man O' War, who's here with us, Madam Rinsola Abiola. And then my third, and perhaps the most formative for me, was junior achievement. And I debated this, but I thought I would come clean anyway to tell you what my junior achievement experience was like and why I really loved it. Now, you see, at Loyola, which is nicknamed the local jail for children for a reason, we had a very strict regime. You wake up at 5:30, you go to bed at 11 p.m. if you're in senior class, 9:45 if you're in junior class. You learned grit. You worked hard. You studied. No time to play for the most part. But one of the few pleasures they allowed us was junior achievement. And it was particularly an exciting gig because our campus didn't allow provisions like many other campuses. So you couldn't bring in outside food. You had to eat whatever was placed in front of you or trade it. We had a whole informal food commodities market. Chicken was for 2 loaves of bread. It's quite incredible what young people can do when given access to economics in a very practical sense. But junior achievement was one of the few things that they gave us. And with junior achievement, you were allowed to essentially, legally sell, buy and sell, which was a pleasure for those of us on campus that had a particular knack for it. And my favorite trade was selling Valentine's Day presents to lovesick young men. I would, because I knew how to, buy really cheap teddy bears and fake roses and cards. And if they paid enough, I would smuggle in some cakes and other things. And then we would put them in people's lockers. We had a special delivery service that would exchange your combination lock, and the Valentine would find a special presentation in their locker, and all of this was quite overpriced. And the only way to legitimize this trade was to make it part of junior achievement. And that was we didn't put that on our company card report. I think we put something else. But it was great for us because it really gave us a practical sense of fulfilling people's needs to express their love on Valentine's Day, and our need to also understand practical economics and how much you could gouge a young man in love. I think the diamond traders learned a lot from us, or we learned a lot from them. I'm not sure who learned more from each other. But that was my junior achievement experience. And it taught me a lot about working with people. We had a team, and people had different roles on the team, and we had to split shares. And of course, it taught me a lot about the reward for meeting people's needs, that is profit. In our case, our profits went to hiring OJB Jisrael for our prom, which was quite the feat because in most other sets, the school had to pay for the star artist, and in our set, we could pay for JA sponsored the prom. But I'm sure those experiences are common to people who've been in and through the program over the last 20 plus years since I went through the program. But, you know, several years after being through that program, I think to myself, as I speak to those of you who are in the program today, what do I wish that I knew at that time that I have now learned? In the hopes that perhaps you'll do a little bit more than Valentine's Day trades as you think through your life after the company prize. And now I settled on 3 things that I think are really important for entrepreneurs, particularly on the continent, to keep in mind and to take to heart. The first is that at the very heart of it, entrepreneurship is the purest form of leadership. It's the purest form of leadership because unlike many other leadership roles that society accords, you choose yourself. Nobody can make you an entrepreneur. Not even profit, which is very elusive when you get into the real world. It's not as easy as the textbooks in the JA company manual says. Because trust me, everything is really set up for you to do very well. But in the real world, it's quite the opposite. Not to scare you, it's just the reality. But I say entrepreneurship is the purest form of leadership because in the real world, what entrepreneurship entails is actually choosing yourself to be the one that takes on a problem that has possibly eluded society, your community, your peers for a long time, or hasn't, and you're deciding to compete with them, and deciding that I'm the one who's going to build a business, an organization, a team that is going to solve this problem and solve it so decisively that I win, and the price is the customer's money. And your customers follow you. Again, not under compulsion, not because they bear your passport, not because they're compelled to by virtue of a religion or by virtue of tribe or by virtue of you being appointed head girl and they not. Not by virtue of any authority that has been granted by any higher power, but because they choose you too. They choose you because you've solved a problem for them. And in this game of leadership, without any form of authority, without any form of compulsion, what you learn is that making a new way for people can be fulfilling in its own way beyond the money that they put in your pockets. But there is a price to pay, which brings me to my second point, which is that while the picture of entrepreneurship is one of the big boss with a cigar in his mouth, sitting cross-legged with his legs on the table, riding private jets. The true picture of entrepreneurship, when it succeeds, is servant leadership. You are in service to everybody. You're the one whose phones can go off. You're the one who always has to worry about salaries. You're the one who has to interrupt play date with your daughter or anniversary dinner with your family or, going to see your parents. Because while everybody has the benefit of clocking out, you simply can't. Too much depends on you. And I wish I understood this, that in being and choosing to be an entrepreneur, I was signing myself up to a life of servitude. Perhaps not in the way that people typically imagine it, but in the sense that it has its rewards, in the sense of profit and impact and recognition from society. But indeed, it does make you a slave to your customers because they can never be satisfied. And I wish somebody told me that when I was a younger entrepreneur. But, and this is the final point, the impact of seeing your customers win with your product, the impact of seeing the people who follow you, who chose you, actually be validated in that choice they have made to buy your product, to use your service. Nothing can replace that. And in fact, I would argue that when you see entrepreneurs do it over and over and over again, like I have, perhaps too many times to count, I can assure you it's not about money. Because there's a lot more profitable things you can do with your time than build a company. It's actually because when you see a satisfied customer, it is a feeling that is so addictive that you want to see it again and again and again. And in the end, as I advance in age and also in a dimension of entrepreneurship, I realize that entrepreneurship is just a different form of public service. A lot of entrepreneurs take pride in the fact that they're not politicians. But, a politician has to win votes by garnering popular support for things that he hasn't yet delivered and perhaps never will. But as an entrepreneur, the only manifesto you have is service delivered. You have to deliver before you campaign. And quite frankly, if you don't deliver, it doesn't matter how much you campaign, you don't get into office of the customer because they're not going to pay for a service they never received. And that puts a greater burden on us as entrepreneurs, particularly in Africa. Because the reality of the society we live in is threefold. First is that capitalism, amazing as it is, cannot solve all our problems. It doesn't mean socialism will, but it means that as a business person in Africa, you have a different kind of burden. You have a burden to build products and serve people, even when you can get away with doing less than. And that is a weight of responsibility that for those of you who choose to be entrepreneurs, you have to carry. You have to carry your people and your continent and serve them, even though you can get away with doing less than. The second reality of our societies is that the businesses we build have to consider the best public interest, not just our selfish interests like Adam Smith volunteered. Unfortunately, in Africa, it is not enough that the baker earns money by selling bread, and he does things in his own self-interest. He actually has to worry that his bread may not actually reach the kids who need that nourishment to be able to attend a full day of school. He needs to worry that at the end of the day, the hawkers who carry his bread to the market may not actually be able to sell this at an affordable price because the end consumer has been squeezed out by policies and costs that they ordinarily cannot afford, that make bread a bit more expensive for them. And of course, cake is not an option. You have to worry as the baker that the people who work in your bakery can earn a living wage and afford bread too. And that's the burden you carry as an entrepreneur. You have not just to worry about your profits, but you have to worry about society. You have to be able to build alongside your business a society that can be served by your business. Which brings me to the final reality of our circumstances in Africa, which is that it will not be done by talking. It will not be done by fancy speeches in fancy locations, in fancy places. It will not be done just because we say it should be done, or because we believe it should be done, or because we know that it deserves to be done. It would only be done because young people in this room make a decision that it must be done. And they are willing to risk everything, even their lives, to make it happen. And that is the reality of you as an entrepreneur today. Our government cannot do very much to defend the public interest because they're unfortunately creatures of a weak system that was handed down to them. And unless entrepreneurs are able to stand in the gap for society, we're not going to have anybody to serve. We're not going to have people who can choose us. And ultimately, we cannot lead people who cannot choose us because entrepreneurship only happens by choice. So, I leave you with these thoughts, particularly you, the young ones. We have to, as Africa, believe in you more than we believe in the politicians. I hope you can rise to the occasion and make Africa proud. Thank you.